Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about 3 things to do as a couple before the end of the year,
so that you can start 2025 on a great note.
And you might be thinking, isn't it November? Early November? Why are we talking about this
Mid-November
already?
when they hear this. And there's a reason for that, because I was really thinking about this today. If you start to think about the next year, it's going to be 2025, at the beginning of the year, it's too late. And I personally feel like the holiday season and those weeks before the end of the year, they fly by so fast. And I know that for a lot of couples, whether you're parents or not, it can feel like your schedule is very full. There's a lot going on. And it's like this whirlwind of stuff going on. And then you start the new year and you're like, okay, whoa, what's going on? And oh, wow, it now feels like a sprint. And now it can almost feel like a continuation. Like, what changed? Of course, we went through the holiday season, but are we better? Are we actually on track with what's important to us and the kind of life we want to live? And so as we go into the 3 things that we encourage you to do, think about doing these before the end of the year. Like, we encourage that because, so we've been doing this long enough, you guys, that we have seen couples can really fall into these 2 different camps. There's couples that feel towards the end of the year as if they're unsure, as if it feels rocky in the relationship, and they're actually present to the fact that it is the end of the year and what are we doing and is anything going to change? So like uncertainty and rocky. Then there's this other camp that can feel a sense of motivation by the fact that it's an end of a year and a start of a new year. Like, they're motivated in terms of, all right, we want to be better in these different ways, and we want to change these things about our habits or our marriage. And all right, you know what? We're even more recommitted to our marriage, right? So like kind of these 2 camps, like the uncertainty, unsure camp, and then the motivated, let's be even better next year camp. And
then the thing we want you to take away is we want you to be in that second camp, but then
Mhm.
there's 2 camps in that camp.
Oh,
And those are the
wow.
ones that
Subcamps.
actually implement anything, and that's
Mhm.
really different versus those that only had motivation, were unclear about what they really wanted to change. So what happens is you just get into the new year, you either feel stressed by the holidays, maybe you feel relaxed, you have time off, whether you're an employee or a business owner. Then there's a lot of motivation that everyone has,
Mhm.
but you didn't clarify for yourself. So you just kind of wait. And then by the time you're just back into the normal routine, it's
Mhm.
like you kind of miss that opportunity.
Yeah. So we
So we
always
want
do.
you to,
Yeah.
we want you to be in the camp of feeling motivated to really look at what could change, what can be different. And then, like from this episode, start to get clear on what actions you can start to take so that you do, quote unquote, hit the ground running,
Yeah.
rather than sort of wait and then it's February and then, well, I'm just back into my normal.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. So I want to jump into the first one because I'm very excited about this one. It's a tradition that we have had really since the beginning of our relationship, and we've evolved so much. Our lives look completely different, but this tradition has really unified us and inspired us every single year. So what it is to have an end of year review and check-in. So this can look different ways. You can do this at home. You know, if some of you need to get creative and do it after the kids are in bed, or you can do it on a Sunday morning, having coffee together and making brunch. Or for us, this year in particular, we actually booked it yesterday. It was really fun to pick it out. A one-night staycation to do, just us. And we happen to do it the same week that we've got family coming to visit us and be able to be with Sky. We don't get that very often, right? So I'm not trying to paint this picture of everyone has to be able to book this night away. That isn't the case every single year for us. We just happen to be having family come visit us and it works out. So we booked a really cool place to go and it's beautiful because environment makes a difference. So even if you can do the staycation idea, great. That's awesome. It is just such a great opportunity to slow down and connect. But even if you can't, think about the environment in which, and I'm going to lay out what this conversation would look like. What's the purpose of this? At first, I'm talking about the environment. Is you don't want to do it in an environment where you feel chaos or you feel stressed and it's like, all right, we're supposed to squeeze this thing in and then it's not fun. You want to, even if you do it at home, again, think about making brunch, putting on music, making your favorite coffee or going to a coffee shop, or even if your kids are around, being able to somehow still create this great environment. Again, maybe you do it after the kids are in bed, but you light candles and you're in your room. And again, make it an experience and not just another thing to get done. Now, what is it again? I said an end of year review and check in. So, starting with the review, we find it to be really important to reflect on the year. That includes lessons learned, whether that be from a challenge encountered or lessons learned in a positive sense from like wins that you had or breakthroughs or goals that you reached. It also can be about reminiscing about just experiences, whether that be a great trip that you took or a job promotion or something that occurred in your family. So, reminiscing again, both about challenges and hurdles that you encountered, because those are always great to glean the lessons, but also reminisce about the great moments because life can fly by so quickly. And if you don't pause to think about those moments, you can lose sight of what all the hard work is really for. Because in between the like peaks of life, again, whether that be a fun trip, which is few and far between, or these peak moments of celebrations with your family, is the day to day, is the quote unquote grind, right? It's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that sometimes can feel like Groundhog Day. And we get it because we're very routine people. So we need to reflect on like what has changed or what really evolved or upgraded or how did we become better people this year. So that's the review. Then the second piece, a check in for the future, for this next year. So, all right, we've talked about this current year that we're closing out. Now let's talk about this next year. Let's be intentional about a few areas. Let's be intentional about getting on the same page of what we want to focus on. Whether you want to list that as goals, because some people are very goal oriented and want something specific, or it is refocusing on what are the top priorities in your relationship or your lives. Like maybe you've been dispersing your energy and your attention in all these different places, and you both feel burned out or tired or feel like it gives you the scraps left over for your family, for your relationship. So it could be like refocusing. Again, some people are more goal oriented. I also think this is an opportunity to really talk about not just what you want to do differently, although that's important and that's why I covered it, but also who you want to be. We believe, you probably have gathered this from our podcast, but as we are together longer and as we age, we all want to age gracefully, hopefully, we should be becoming better versions of ourselves. Doesn't mean we'll ever stop being human. Sorry, you can't unsubscribe from being human. But there should be ways that we are taking the lessons from this last year and now saying, you know what, here's how I'm going to be better. And that can be in any area of your life, of your relationship. But I think it's very important to set those intentions because of what we said. If you don't, it's very easy to just get caught up in the grind again. And next year is just a slight variation of this year. You're repeating the same patterns in your relationship, same conflicts are happening. You feel the same level of satisfaction. Like that is really only the case if you aren't being intentional and then aren't following through. And so I know people, you're hearing this, and every time we bring up this idea of talking about a check in, couples are like, yes, we love this idea. We want to do this. If you're a person who likes structure, right, who wants it laid out for you in a fun way that you can take notes, write it out, even print it out and put it up, that's one of the templates in our family meeting guide, which you guys, it is the best resource, I would say, in terms of really getting aligned and communicating and being on the same page and feeling connected as a couple, the family meeting guide. So we'll link in the show notes the two different ways to get that resource because you can get it either as a separate guide and product or you get it included as a bonus gift in the 30-day Prioritizing Us Couples Challenge, which you can sign up for the next round and you get it right away in your welcome email. But that family meeting guide, again, is great for doing our yearly template. What's the conversation that we have? So it's not just this, hey, look, all right, so they told us to create some goals, like you want some structure. You want to write it down. You want to feel like it's this inspiring, motivating conversation. So I highly recommend getting that resource in one of the 2 ways that we'll link below.
And you'll want to then take that into this next point, which is you obviously have to start to look at your life and realize things in your schedule and your habits need to also change. If you're doing the family meeting, the quarterly is about going through and identifying your individual satisfactions in all the areas that make up your relationship. The yearly one is about looking at a bigger perspective of what is it that we actually value? What actions have we been taking that either hinder or bring that value more forward? And so, like anything, you have the motivation, you have the new ideas, you select your target. But if you're going to just try to operate on the same level of energy and schedule and habits, well, that thing's never going to
Squeeze
come to
it in.
fruition.
Yeah.
Why would it? Because if you operate the same, you'll get the same results that you have now. So if you want different results, you obviously have to do something different, which a lot of times can be in the thought process, but we want to get more specific to, you got to look at your schedule and your habits. And like, not that you need another analogy, but just think of your closet, for example. And if you were going to buy new clothes and shoes, you might think, well, I don't have any space for it in there. Well, you probably don't. And you don't have space in your life right now. You're probably thinking of, oh, I'm so limited on time. We have kids, work, a lot of things going on. So you don't just go buy clothes and shoes in the same closet. You need to go in there and do an inventory of what have you not worn for a year, 2 years, 5 years? What in there is from college that you need to definitely get rid of? So you have to clean out that closet to fit for the new. And it's the same in determining what your schedule and your habits are actually going to be like.
Yeah.
So what schedule do I keep now? Where do I have this just same pattern of doing the same things? And are those things just task oriented and based on routine, or are those things being prioritized to further meet the goals that you're now setting for the next year?
Yeah. One thing I just want to really, I guess, acknowledge you for or appreciate about you, if I can just sprinkle this
Throw a
in.
lot of things away. Is that what you're going to say?
That is a funny quirk. That just a quick side note. I did bring that up to him in our last check-in that we had, because we have our weekly family meeting check-ins too, you guys. And Aaron does love cleanliness to the point of him loving to throw things away when they're in the way. And I was like, hey, can you check in with me a little bit before you just throw a couple things away? And we laughed about it, right? It's not one of those like big serious things.
And barely even needed a couple of business cards.
They were important. Okay, but my point, I wanted to acknowledge you for something.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so the acknowledgement is, I feel especially this year, you've done a great job for us as a team in really holding steady what the priorities are. Because I can sometimes get like, ooh, I'm excited about this. Let's do this.
You don't say.
Which sometimes you do. Go with me, right? Getting this vacation home in Ohio, for one, being one. But that was a priority. That was a goal we set. We just moved up the timeline. But what I'm getting at is, you just remind us of what the priorities are. And we really try to hold those boundaries. That we really, like, we even were texting with some friends in the last few days. And I love having the type of relationships with people where we can say, you know what, I feel spread thin. Or you know what, we really need to just like, we can get together with you guys in a few weeks, but we got to just simplify. These are the things we're focusing on, and be able to say that to each other as friends. So anyway, I appreciate that you keep us focused. But that second point, again, is to audit your schedule and your habits, again, before the beginning of the year. I would say you want to start these habits, at least some of them, before the end of the year. I feel so many people almost like backtrack at the end of the year because it's just like a free for all. Oh, it's the holidays. Of course, people think of health when I say that, which that may be the case, but get ahead of the things that are important to you right now. So you start the year just feeling all that momentum. Now, going to the third.
Yeah, the third one is more on the emotional gauge. It's to clean up the clutter, but in
Mm,
this case, we mean the emotional clutter,
yeah.
the places of disconnection, the things that you've withheld or projected, the filters of perception that all might be there. Because we mentioned in a previous episode the psychology term emotional spillover, which is more on a day to day, that when you move from one segment of your day to the next, say an easy one being work to home, whatever emotion that you had at work, which could be chaos and your boss yelled at you and you feel stressed and anxious, then you leave work, but that emotion is still there, maybe slightly more subdued, but then you walk in, and then just a little conversation just brings all that back up,
Mm,
right? So that's called emotional spillover. And what we don't want you to do is have that emotional spillover from 2024 to 2025.
yeah.
And what that really is would be the places that you haven't addressed some of the hard conversations, you haven't really went back and resolved or repaired some of the bigger challenges. And it's not just external, right? There's the way that you each showed up or handled those challenges, patterns, conflict cycles, things that you said to upset or offend each other. And we're really not wanting you to go back and dig those things up and then stay mad at each other. This is understanding that emotional clutter is either going to come go with you if you do nothing,
Mm,
or you have the opportunity to actually clean that up. Because as much as you put in place the ideas for your goals, for doing this check in and saying our schedule is going to be like this, if you're both coming from this place where the emotional spillover is going to be, well, my partner just doesn't prioritize me as much, or
they're always snapping at
is
me or
snapping, is interested in managing and controlling things, is overly critical, your ideas for changing the patterns and the schedule and the refocus is only going to last a week or two. Once
Mhm.
the motivation's gone, what's going to come back in there is what's familiar. What's familiar are all these places that you have not cleaned up the emotional clutter.
Yeah, and so to give more language to that, it's really about repair, right? And for those of you who've been listeners for a while, we talk a lot about that. And repair, it can look like a full on, hey, let's sit down and talk about the things we need to forgive from the year. It also can look like, what, we didn't repair from that huge blow up we had a couple weeks ago where we both said some harsh things. We need to actually have a repair conversation. And so that repair can mean different things in different contexts, but what we're really getting at is for you to free yourselves from that baggage, because exactly what Aaron said, you will just carry it with you and it will show up and manifest in some other way. And here's what you need to ask yourselves in order to know that you got to it is there anything else changing the way I see my partner in a negative light? Like, that's a way to really think about it, because the clutter, the things that aren't repaired, big or small, the damage is in how they change the way you see and perceive your partner in a negative sense. Like, think back to the beginning days of your relationship. You probably have heard the term rosy colored glasses. It's like, okay, we see all the positives, almost somewhat to a skewed perspective in the early days. But when we don't clean up the clutter, we can have that reverse effect where it is not only not rosy anymore, I got mud covering my glasses and the way I see my partner. So that's a good gauge to ask yourself. And I'll say it again. Is there anything else that's unresolved that is affecting the way I see or perceive my partner in a negative light? And those would be things that are shining a light on what needs to be addressed. And so, we have resources for that if you're wanting. Again, we're all about structure. You guys, we're the biggest, like, give us a structured type of people. We want a visual. So we have many guides for that. We can link those in the show notes if you're one of those people that really likes to have that structure for repair. But what we're getting at for this podcast is to do the first two things, right? So an end of year review and check-in. That's a fun conversation. Let's reminisce about the year. Let's also set intentions for the next. The second one, let's audit our schedule and our habits. What changes do we need to make for the better so that we are actually fulfilling on our dreams, our goals, our vision? And then third, all right, if we want to fulfill on those things, if we're really committed to these priorities, these goals that we're setting up, we need to make sure we're not being dragged down by the baggage. So let's have some, like Erin talked about, maybe some difficult conversations, maybe some moments where it's not the fun stuff necessarily, but it allows us to get back to more of that fun. So have some of those emotional clutter cleaning up conversations and be free of it, really. So, we hope this episode just gave you some ideas and do these. Again, these are traditions that we have every year. And it's one reason that I truly feel every year our life gets better and better, even when we go through hard ones, because those hard years, which we've talked about, the lessons we glean from them, because we look for it, we mine for the gold, we then just skyrocket the next year. So, we really hope this gives you some conversations to have. Let us know how you liked this episode. Make sure you use the resources that we mentioned, especially the family meeting guide. We'll link both the ways to get that, as well as repair guides, because we want you to have these conversations successfully before the end of the year. So, it's an exciting holiday season, you guys, and make sure you hit subscribe so you can hear past and future episodes. We've got some great things coming. Not only great episodes, but we have a top secret, really exciting. I mean, I might be the most excited about this resource coming. It's going to be a January only resource. So we're going to be announcing that in the coming weeks. So you'll definitely want to stay plugged in and really hear about that. So with that, you guys, we're so grateful that you're here, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.